morning. I believe that we're going to ask for some chairs. Edgar, we're bringing chairs for the back? That's it? It seems that there are two chairs here, guys. If anybody needs to, as you all know, we have a waiting list for the event, and in fact, I've been told that we're above the fire department restriction of the number of people, so we might have to open that slide doors over there, and there's a similar room next door just to make sure that we follow the safety fire department code. I want to repeat again, my name is Jorge Piñón. I'm the director of the Latin America and Caribbean program at the University of Texas in Austin. Even though I already said it, just for new guests that came in, safety at the University of Texas is important. In the case of an emergency that we have to exit this room, the doors are right behind you. We go down 3 floors, and the muster point is on the east side of the hotel. Please be careful going down the stairs and use the handrail. The Latin American and Caribbean Center, Energy Center at the University of Texas, we are embedded in the Jackson School of Geosciences, thanks to the contribution that the Jackson Foundation had made to our program. Even though we're embedded in the Jackson School, we are an interdisciplinary program at the University of Texas. We are the energy gatekeeper, more or less, at UT Austin. And we work with the law school, Macomb, Cockrell School of Engineering, and a number of other school of law, the LBJ School of Public Policy. So we played that role at the University of Texas. Our program is basically to identify research opportunities, academic opportunities among our stakeholders, which are all of you in this room. We are a research university. Of our $2.2 billion budget for this academic year, over $800 million is research. A lot of that energy research, and a lot of that research from many of your respective companies, and we thank you for that. You have the program in front of you. What I would like to do is just take one quick minute to introduce a couple of folks in the room. And then we'll go right into the program. There's a very large Chilean delegation here, which at the end of my remarks, I'm going to ask him just to briefly stand up so you guys can see them. We're going to have a little bit of time after the breakfast, so if you guys want to introduce yourself, please feel free to do so. I would like to introduce Dr. Melinda Taylor with the University of Texas School of Law. In fact, Mr. Minister, Dr. Taylor just came back from Santiago, where she hosted a seminar for a number of about 140 lawyers that came in to talk about energy law, oil and gas. So Melinda was just back from Santiago recently. In fact, you had Marcelo Albornoz, who is Undersecretary of Justice in your program. We also have Dr. John Butler, who is with the Macomb School of Business, and John is the Director of the Energy Management Innovation Center at the Macomb School of Business. By the way, a quick announcement. We are announcing, or we already announced, the K. Bailey Hutchinson Center for Energy, Law, and Business. And as you all know, Senator Hutchins, a senator from the state of Texas for over 20 years, is a UT alum, and she's going to open up an energy center in partnership with the law school and Macomb School of Business. So welcome for the K. Bailey Hutchins Center for Energy, Law, and Business. Quickly, I'd like to make some quick introductions of part of the Chilean delegation. I don't know if Dr. Tuckman made it. Marcelo, Dr. Tuckman, who is the general manager of ENAP, which is Chile's national oil company, is here. All of you guys came in at 5 o'clock this morning, so I don't know who was able to get in or not. Welcome, Dr. Tuckman, being with us here today. His Excellency Ambassador Juan Gabriel Valdez, who I believe is also here. Mr. Ambassador, welcome. Ambassador Valdez has been ambassador to Argentina, United Nations. You were part of the UN project in Haiti. So again, Mr. Ambassador, welcome back to the U.S., and we thank you for your service. Also, Kathleen Barkley. Where's Kathleen? She is here. Kathleen Barkley with the AmCham. Those of us, I've been an expat for Amoco and BP for more than half of my career, and the work that the AmCham organizations do throughout Latin America is outstanding. So any of you guys that go to any country, I don't care where you go, one of your first calls is your local AmCham office. Kathleen, thank you for your work. Looking forward to working with you. Rhea Davis from the DOE, I think Rhea is here also, came down from Washington. She is with the International Policy Group at the U.S. Department of Energy. And finally, I want to be sure that I thank the Institute of the Americas. Where is Jeremy? Jeremy Martin. I'm sure all of you guys know Jeremy. And also the Greater Houston Partnership, Bojan Vukovic, who is here somewhere. Thank you to the Greater Houston Partnership and to the Institute of the Americas for your support. Mr. Minister, I'm also pleased to share with you, and I have here that I'll give you later, a letter from the governor's office, the governor of Texas, in the person of the Secretary of State. There's going to be a State of Texas delegation who will be traveling to Chile August 5th and 8th. So hopefully we'll see you in Santiago, and hopefully many of these folks will be able to join us and come down and visit. Let's get into the, one more remark before I get into trouble. The reason that these events move forward and happen, and everything works, lights, computers, all of this, is not because of us. We just show up and get up in the front. But I want to recognize Paula Esteves and Lucila Arbolella. Where is Paula and Lucila? They're with the energy. They're probably working. They're probably working. They're with the ministers. They're with the minister's staff, and I want to thank the two of them because really they have been fantastic in helping us. And then, of course, we want to thank our own Ed Garza, who's here somewhere, for putting this event together for us. Chile is important. Chile is important. Not only from a national context, but also from a regional context. So it is a great honor for us to host this delegation from Chile. By the way, is the Chilean delegation, can you please briefly just stand up? Just if you can. I know there is like maybe 13, 14, 15 of you. So again, welcome and thank you for being here with us. We'll have, I'll introduce Jorge Pizarro in a minute. He will have the first presentation on Chile, and he'll follow by a keynote and comments from Minister Pacheco. We will then sit down and have a question and answer period that is going to be hosted by Dr. Butler and Dr. Taylor. So let's get going. Jorge Ignacio Pizarro, prior to his appointment as Executive Vice President for the Foreign Investment Committee of Chile, worked in the private sector as General Manager of Puro Chile in New York. He also served as an advisor to the Interior Ministry and the Ministry's representative for International Affairs before the OAS, the United Nations, and Mercosur. He was an analyst at the Research Department of the General Government Secretariat. He has served also as an associate professor at the Universidad Católica de Chile. He studied history at the Universidad Católica de Chile and holds a master's degree in politics from the London School of Economics. Jorge Ignacio, por favor.
If you need a pointer, right there.
All right. Thanks. Well, good morning, everyone. I want to start by thanking, of course, the University of Texas and all the team that has already been mentioned in terms of putting together this great meeting. I mean, not just me, we as a Chilean delegation, we're very, very glad to be here and to see this response from you guys. So by saying that, I want to be just going straight to the point so we can enjoy a very fruitful comments from the minister, and after that dialogue. So just for you to understand what's the reason that I'm actually here, is that I'm the head of the Foreign Investment Committee. We're an agency that is actually transforming into a proper and proactive attraction agency, and we believe that Chile at this very moment, and supported and backed by what has been its recent history, it's in a moment of great importance in economical, social, political terms, that is open up a lot of opportunities, not just in the sector of energy, but in many sectors for foreign investors, and especially for investors from the US, which has been a historical investor in the country. So that's a quick brief to our economy, or to our market, if you want to put it so. I think it's really important to highlight that Chile, even though it's not a big economy, it has reached actually the highest per capita income of Latin America by presenting itself as a platform. All right, as a port country during the late 90s and the early 2000s, but also as a platform nowadays for companies that want to start working in Chile, and from then on moving towards the rest of the continent sometimes, for services, infrastructure, so on and so forth. You see the Chile's sovereign ratings are pretty good. I think the show of that, it's been remarked by the previous agenda we had with Mrs. President Bachelet during the White House, visiting the World Bank, the IMF, and the entire good relation we have with international institutions, with other countries, and of course in a full context of integration and prompt stability. So, even though, well, Chile has experienced some great figures of growth during the last super cycle of commodities. It actually peaked during 2011-2012. That had a correlation with foreign direct investment that of course came and lowered its pace by the last month of 2012 and consistently during 2013. But even though that's been consistent, if you compare our growth expectations by the IMF with the other regions or our natural competitors, which could be the OECD now that we are a current member, or Latin America, for example, or actually the rest of the world, you will see that the expectations of growth on our country, even though it could sound probably more moderate for what was being experienced for the last years, in comparative terms, are very competitive. And in that sense, Chile and our own market and our own capability to approach our region, and Asia especially, as a privileged port towards the Pacific are intact. the chart you see on the top left is the global flows of foreign direct investment. If you see for the last 4 or 5 years, been more or less steady. But if you compare it to the chart on your down right, you see clearly that Latin America, for example, not like the other continent, has shown a really good pace, a growing pace in terms of its capability of attracting foreign direct investment. Within Latin America, Chile is the 3rd largest attractor of foreign direct investment. Higher, much more above than other economies that are quite bigger than us. After Brazil, Mexico, then it comes Chile. And the result of that, as I was saying before, is not something that comes out as the result of a junction or of a particular situation. It's the result of a long-term work, long-term commitments, and a strong commitment to stability above all. If we compare to the global if we can consider the flows of foreign direct investment as a global market, we'll see that Chile is now placed 18. My understanding is that, according to the figures that the UN just released a couple of days, apparently we moved up one step towards position 17. But what I think it's relevant to highlight from that particular chart is that if you count just the hard blue bars, which are the developing economies, we're even higher. We're in the 9th position. And this is absolute, I mean, this is absolute terms. So we're talking about absolute numbers, not just a percent of the GDP. If you compare with the other economies that you see there that are much bigger than us, you will of course see that foreign direct investment in the shape of our economy, it's crucial. This is the trend from 2003 to 2013, of course a 10-year cut. You will see that it multiplied by 5 during the last 10 years. As I was saying before, during 2011, 2012, of course, within the super cycle of commodities, the mining sector, which is a really important sector within our economy, of course, invested heavily. And that's why you see those peaks, almost a couple of outliers by year 2012. But you can also see that for 2013, we came back to the normal linear trend in terms of growth of our capacity to bring foreign direct investment to our country. We think this is a steady pace. We think this is a long-term trend. We're trying to keep it so. Actually, the figures that has been just released by the central bank, which is a totally independent institution within the country, shows that during the first 4 semesters of this year, the numbers are pretty good. Actually, they're above 7,000, which, of course, compared to the first 4 months of 2013, we can see there is so far it's a very good approach. Although, being totally responsible, we have to say that what we do expect is keep going with the same trend of growth. Of course, not reaching the peaks of 2012. We're not expecting those high prices in commodities, but we do expect that, even though we all know that 2014 is not the easy year for an economy, we will keep the pace in terms of growing our capability of fostering foreign direct investment. This is how the cake is being divided. This is a cut of 2009, 2012. Of course, we can only use the official figures by the central bank, which have been released like with a year I mean, late by a year. So during those years, they were pretty marked. They were pretty marked by the mining industry. That's why it shows almost 50% of all the foreign investment that we received just for that sector. Let me, though, make 2 remarks on this that I think are pretty important to understand the complexity of this. First is that the mining industry is not just the extraction or the primary projects, but also there's a huge industry on services to mining that's been growing a lot within the country, not just to provide services for the mining projects that are actually within our borders, but also to provide and to supply the demand of mining projects that have been taking place in Peru, some in Argentina and Bolivia, which of course they're a growing market for us. And that shows clearly what I was trying to explain before, that we see Chile not as we don't see Chile just as business opportunities within the borders of our market, but also as a dynamic platform in order to approach in a good way services, good trade to other economies, not just within our main or bordering region like South America, but also to Asia. Sorry, and I will explain why and how is that possible a bit later. On the other hand, during this cut 2009-2012, Spain for the first time became the largest capital exporter towards Chile, if you want to put it that way, or the largest investor in our country, replacing the United States, which is who's been the historical investor in our country, even though during those years it was pretty marked by mining. And as you know, I mean, Spain it can be anything but definitely not a mining country. And what is interesting to understand here is that the investment they had put in place in the country is very diversified. It goes everywhere from tourism services towards engineering, participating in the concessions on infrastructure, energy, so on and so forth. And in that sense, I think it's really crucial to understand that you probably will think on the historical terms of Chile as a primary sector economy, but it's moving towards a more sophisticated economy, if you want to put it that way. The sector that is growing the most and more consistently within our economy is the service sector, and definitely I see a lot of opportunities, not just for the service sector itself, but also to providing good services to the other industries within the country. This is just a quick look on how the world sees Chile as an economy. Of course, the doing business of the World Bank is the best world-known index in terms of a business climate, and we're in the place 34 out of 189, which is very good. It's very consistent with what the World Economic Forum is saying on the same field. Of course, we're not. Even though we've been consistent on a good place, on a good rate, we know we need to keep working hard on improving this index. And I see a lot of measures. A couple of those will be explained also by the Energy Minister, but we also have a very strong productive and innovation agenda that I'm pretty sure will help us to probably, hopefully, come out a couple of places again on this chart. The last one on the right, I think is very important because it shows the commitment of the country, of the state, and in particular of this very government, in terms of providing all the guarantees to our local investor, but also in a strong way to the foreign investor, and that's the Transparency International Corruption Index, which is by far the most respected organization when it comes to measuring transparency and good practices. You see Chile there on the position 22, which is pretty good for us. If we compare that to many of traditional European countries, we come out very good, if I may say so very humbly. And this way I was, why I was saying that we see Chile as a port country rather than just an isolated economy. What probably in the past years, and I mean like 100 years ago on our history, was seen as a liability at the end, or as a problem, that we were isolated. In nowadays world, with these global, complex, integrated economies, we're in a very good position. I mean, it all depends on how you look the map, and we're facing Asia. The blue countries you see there are all the countries we actually have a commercial agreement with. Most of them are third-generation FTAs. Of course, all of those include an investment protection chapter, which is put in there specially and specifically to protect and to put the rules for foreign direct investment in both ways. And it represents not just 63% of the world's population, but more importantly, 85% of the global GDP. So a lot of the companies that actually come to our country to invest, as I said before, they come to our market because they can approach with certain privilege other markets that are of their interest. And of course, even though we have all this grid of treaties, which is crucial, we need to keep working on infrastructure and critical infrastructure that can put us in a more competitive place when it comes to our export chain, which is crucial for our country. This is a totally export-oriented country, as we saw before. The limitations of our own market has prompted us to start working on this, and this is the result of a commitment taken by the early 90s with democratic governments in terms of opening the country towards the world, in terms of integrating our economy in global terms, and from then on, use it as a platform to make and to become and to make our good business opportunities not just to local entrepreneurs, but also to foreign companies that they see here an opportunity as well. Another thing that is pretty interesting when it comes to foreign direct investment and cross-border, I mean both ways, is that Chile has signed up a series of 25 double taxation treaty, I mean to avoid double taxation. Unfortunately, the US is not at this particular moment within that list, but we are in a very crucial moment in that terms. The double taxation treaty has been negotiated already for a couple of years. It showed really good results. My understanding, and this is not my particular field of responsibility, but of course we work very close with the trade undersecretary. And I spoke with him yesterday and said this has really good prospects in terms of being finally approved by the US Senate. So everyone understands that within, of course, the negotiation of other treaties that are taking place, it's very feasible that in the near future we will also have a double taxation treaty that, of course, will boost a historical relation of investment from the American companies on our country. Also, I think it's pretty important to remark that we came to the first 10 years of the FTA between Chile and the US, even though it was signed in 2003. I mean, it actually started working properly the 1st of January of 2004, if I'm not wrong. So by this time we have 10 years, which has proved absolutely fruitful for both of our economies, and I would say especially for Chile as well. So our commitment in those terms of putting all the incentives right, giving the legal guarantees, giving a clear field and all the rules in place is a long-term commitment for us that has given us really good results, and we're fully committed to keep deepening those instruments in order to foster even more investment, and even more trade. What I would like to mention at the end is, and I want to be totally open in the sense that we're going under an entire transformation of our institution with the Foreign Investment Committee in terms of modernizing it. We have a strong competition, as you will all know, for all the developing economies. But as we saw before in those charts, Chile has been a historical attractor of foreign investment. And we do believe that with this new institution we will be more proactive and more efficient in order to target our efforts in bringing more investment. In that sense, I let you all invited, of course, to please contact us in any way. So if we can help out with any kind of information, advising, whenever you're in Chile with meeting agendas, so on and so forth. So I just want to finish my words saying that we're happy to do this work. We do want to help the business community here, and not just in Houston but in all the U.S. And I think President Bachelet made a beautiful remark yesterday at the Chamber of Commerce, saying that stability is based on trust, and we want to continue working on trust, both with our own people, but very strongly with the business community all around the world. Thank you.
I was reminded that University of Texas at Austin has a number of projects in Chile. And I was reminded that we have now contributed the first $50 million, part of a $100 million commitment that the University of Texas has with the Great Magellan Telescope that is being built in Las Campanas. So we are a 10% partner in that project, Mr. Minister, which is about $1 billion project. The university already has funded $50 million of the $100 million part. So you'll see UT Austin quite often. Jorge, I want to pick up on something that Jorge ended up his remarks with before we introduce the minister, and that is that many of you in this room are familiar with Canada's Fraser Institute 2013 Global Petroleum Survey. The Fraser Institute Petroleum Survey has about 864 industry respondents, representing 762 companies in the oil sector, both not only on the extraction side, but also in the service sector. In fact, the respondents to the Fraser report represent about $312 billion of investment in the oil and gas sector. And it happens that Chile is ranked #1 in Latin America. So Chile is very well positioned as they open their upstream oil and gas sector to further development. The areas that the survey looks at, Mr. Minister, are things like fiscal terms, taxation, environmental regulation. There are 16 different categories. And this is the industry. This is the industry. Let me quote the report, because it says that global, by the way, this slide that I'm showing you is only Latin America. But the report is global, which, by the way, Mr. Minister, it includes all 50 U.S. states and also the Canadian provinces. So when they look at the United States and Canada, they break it down by state and they look it out by Canada. And I'm quoting here. It says, Chile's overall score improved from the middle of the third quintile to the lower second quintile this year, improving its global ranking from to 76th place from 147 to 26th place. So from 76th place globally, Chile has now jumped to 26 in the world. And one of the areas, if you look at the report in the survey, the respondents, one of the main issues of Chile is political stability and security and continuity, which for our business is extremely important. So we're very, very proud to share with you this report. Edgar, if you want to take it down. We at Texas do things a little bit different. That's why they call that, what is it, Austin is weird. And usually an individual at VIP like the minister is introduced by a higher ranking official of the university. We value at UT Austin not only value our researchers, our staff, and of course the provost and the president of the university, but we also value our students. In fact, our students are key. Without our students, this institution would be nothing. So we have a special surprise minister as far as who is going to introduce it. Pero Pablo.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Pedro Pablo Cuevas. I am a civil Chilean engineer, actually studying a master's in energy and earth resources at the University of Texas. I'm here studying thanks to the sponsorship of the Becas Chile scholarship. As a part of my studies, my research is about the potential of the unconventional oil and gas resources in the Magallanes Basin in Chile. I'm interested because I'm aware of the future opportunities in our energy sector. I have really enjoyed my time here in Austin, or in Texas. I'm amazed with this wonderful state. My wife and I are feeling just like we would like you to feel when you visit us in Chile. This morning, I'm thanked and pleased and honored to introduce you to the Minister of Energy, Máximo Pacheco Mate. Minister Pacheco has an amazing experience as a politician, executive, and an economist. He started his economist studies at the Universidad de Chile, and after working for banks and investment companies, he became the operator vice president of the state-owned copper mine company, Codelco, in 1990. Later, he assumed as vice president of Carter Holt Harvey for Chile and Latin America in 1994. Afterwards, he started a great and long career in international paper, finishing as president for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Russia. Besides, he has been a member on the board of directors of important banks and companies in Chile. Finally, Mr. Pacheco assumed office as Minister of Energy of Chile in March 2014 under the presidency of Michelle Bachelet Gere. So, please welcome to Mr. Máximo Pacheco.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I was told that this was going to be a meeting with casual dress code, but this was, I'm not sure whether it was at 4:30 in the morning or at 5 o'clock when I just landed here after our flight from Washington was delayed by 3.5 hours. So I'm not sure I followed properly the instructions. Because I can see that many of you are wearing a tie. Huh? Dear Jorge Piñón, Director of Latin America, the Caribbean and Energy Program at the Jackson School of Geosciences, Mr. Ambassador, good friend, dear friends from our business delegation coming from Chile or from Washington in the last couple of days, because we had the opportunity to visit with the President Bachelet, an official visit, and we had a very, very interesting and constructive meeting with President Obama, and then we had lunch with Vice President Biden and Secretary of State Kerry. We had meetings with Christine Lagarde from the IMF, with the President of the World Bank, and we had a very, very interesting meeting with the Secretary of Energy, Ernest Moniz, where we signed a cooperation agreement between Chile and the US, because Chile highly respects America. In fact, there are many reasons why many countries in the world respect America. But today, the foremost reason is related to energy. It is true that the United States is closer to energy independence than the country has been in decades. Your nation generates more renewable energy than ever and produces more natural gas than anyone. Nearly every American householder's energy bill is lower because of it. Carbon emissions that cause climate change are also lower. It is not only outstanding performance in traditional energy that characterizes the United States of today. The US is also becoming a leader in the technology required by the energy sources of the future, specifically in solar power. It is a global leader in energy production, innovation, and technology. It is unlikely that Chile will reach such a comfortable position in the near or distant future, given the composition of our country's energy resource endowment, with minor reserves of oil and gas and some difficulties to execute hydro and thermoelectric projects. However, we will certainly try. How? With hard work, national unity, inventiveness, and of course, by inviting local and foreign investment. The task is huge, and so are the business opportunities. An example, Chile's main electric grid, the central interconnected system, supplies 75% of our requirements in electricity. It needs to double its capacity in the next 10 years by 7,000 to 9,000 megawatts. The existing facilities are also prone to congestion and badly need revamping before new capacity comes online by 2018. Both of these areas are open to foreign investment. Another example, Chile recently launched its national energy agenda, and we've prepared a kind of an executive summary of it, and you have some copies, probably not for everyone, because we did not expect so many people to be in the meetings that we've had, both in Washington and here. But still, if you go to page 8 in the agenda, you will see some of our key goals and objectives. This agenda is a roadmap with a series of measures to develop a reliable, sustainable, and inclusive energy sector that offers reasonable prices to the consumer. This agenda establishes energy efficiency as a state policy aimed at households, industries, mines, and the public sector. The policy will be reinforced by an Energy Efficiency Act currently on the drawing boards. Chile considers the energy efficiency legislation from the state of California as an example to be followed in the writing of this bill. Moreover, given the vast experience of US legislation in creating adequate incentives, especially for distribution companies, Chile welcomes US know-how in the local implementation of these ideas. The energy agenda was elaborated during the first 100 days of the government of President Bachelet, and is the fruit of an extensive public participation process that involved a wide range of stakeholders. And that's why we like to show that pictures of all of the process followed to design this agenda. A major driver of this new policy outlined in the agenda is a more active role of the state in terms of sharing a vision, planning, and regulating energy development. The idea is to make it easier for new companies to become players within our country. This will generate more competition and efficiency and will diversify the Chilean energy market to make it more transparent and dynamic. Different government ministries and agencies acting within a public participation model are designing a new territorial organization based on land use, planning to facilitate the conditions for the development of projects. This step is vital for new hydroelectric projects that show a larger proportion of land usage than other energy generating initiatives. The agenda also determined that natural gas will play a key role in Chile's energy matrix. Natural gas is the bridge fuel that can power the economy with less pollution. That is why we welcomed the recent announcement by the US government that will allow the export of shale gas in the near future. And that's why we are here today, to understand better the dynamics of this market, and the way we can participate in this process. Chileans are optimistic about the possibility of having access to U.S. shale gas. One important development underway that will facilitate this access is the expansion of the Panama Canal, which will allow larger container ships with LNG to cross from the eastern shores of North America to the Pacific as of 2015. Chile has a great interest in encouraging commercial relationships among private companies to import natural and non-conventional gas, bearing in mind that the free trade agreement between our nations facilitates bilateral commerce. Meanwhile, we are building closer energy ties with Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia, with a clear and powerful idea: creating an interconnected electricity grid on the Pacific coastline of the continent. This multifaceted initiative, involving 4 Andean nations, is expected to come on stream by 2020. The U.S. Secretary of Energy, Mr. Ernest Moniz, and I discussed some of these ideas during our meeting in Washington last Monday. I'm happy to say that we established a framework for bilateral energy cooperation and identified priority areas of work within the measures announced in Chile's energy agenda. It is worthwhile mentioning that Chile participates in several regional multilateral initiatives in the energy sector, in conjunction with the United States. These include the Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, and Connect the Americas 2020. During the upcoming period, we hope to have an active role in these organizations. Another important initiative linked to our focus on natural gas is the institutional and financial strengthening of the state-owned national oil company, ENAP, and we have, as part of our delegation, Marcelo Tockman, who is the CEO of ENAP. And ENAP draws its oil and gas from reserves in the Magallanes region in the southernmost end of the southern hemisphere, in Punta Arenas. The company will play a fundamental role in the exploration and production of conventional and non-conventional natural gas in the upcoming years. ENAP is also studying the development of a third liquefaction plant in Chile with private partners, a decision that will be adopted by 2015. Regarding non-conventional renewable energy, NCRE, Chile will bring on stream some 1,000 megawatts this year. The beauty is that the country shows great potential in terms of solar energy in the Atacama Desert. Therefore, there is zero subsidy in place to develop the non-conventional renewable energy. And the Atacama Desert, as you know, is has one of the highest levels of radiation in the world. Currently, there are several U.S. investments in solar power plants. America's Sun Edison, a couple of weeks ago, completed a 100-megawatt solar to serve Chile's iron and steel company. This is the largest solar power plant in Latin America. One of the main challenges confronted by solar and other NCRE facilities and projects is to enable the smooth integration of these intermittent sources of energy in the local transmission and generation systems. In the recent document, 7 Challenges in the New Energy Reality in Chile, that has been prepared by the Chile-US Energy Business Council, that is a related to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, this document stresses the potential cooperation between both countries, with a focus on technologies dealing with solar power, wind power, and geothermal power. It emphasizes smart grids and solar thermal collectors. The many ideas set forward by the Council enrich the available alternatives. They range from cooperation in implementing the emission standard for thermoelectric plants, filter technology, and abatement plans, to Chile's adoption of instruments from the U.S. financial market that could be applicable in the local electricity market. Dear friends, the objective of our visit, jointly with a big and very, very significant group of businessmen accompanying President Bachelet on her trip, is to obtain technical cooperation and new investment for energy facilities in Chile. My hope, and the hope of the group of businessmen that join our delegation, is to spark your curiosity and jumpstart your eventual participation in the study, financing, procurement, or development of the energy infrastructure required by our country, as well as offering a market for your shale gas and learning from your expertise in energy efficiency, technological development, and renewable energies. Most Chileans now agree on the need for more investment in energy and understand that the country's growth, employment levels, and global competitiveness depend heavily on a clever management of the energy question. We would like to count on your involvement in the multiple business opportunities opened for investors in Chile and look forward to your forthcoming visit. I end by saying, as someone before me once said, no audience ever complained that a presentation or speech was too short. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. There was somebody else I always forget. I believe the Honorable Consul Jorge Valdez is here. Jorge Valdez is the Consul of Chile in Houston, so his door is open. He's the one that you need to knock on his door and either complain or say that we need to work in Chile. Welcome. What we would like to do is we're going to have a question and answer session. It'll be moderated by Dr. Butler and Dr. Taylor. At first we thought of asking you folks to write questions, but I think this is a pretty civil crowd. So what we would like to do is really open the questions from the floor, and then Dr. Butler and Dr. Taylor will try to manage the Q&A. We have about 20 minutes, probably a little bit more. The minister has a tight agenda this morning, but I think we want to be sure that we have time for all of you to ask him questions. So I'll turn it over, if you guys can sit down, to Dr. Butler and Dr. Taylor to open up the question and answer. Thank you.
And I think what we have there are cards on the table, so if people want to write their questions down, Edgar, I think, can collect them and we will read them and go forward. If we want to get a question started, I'll just ask the first question, prerogative of one of the moderators, but Mr. Minister, you mentioned hydro, you mentioned unconventional renewable energy. I just wondered, with the recent decision not to go forward in the South with the large hydro projects, sort of what your thoughts are about hydro going forward and in the total mix of energy sources for Chile?
Well, it's a good question, and I appreciate it, because I think it's something we've been discussing a lot internally in Chile. And my first comment is to mention that We are probably the poorest country in Latin America in terms of fossil fuels. Any oil, or almost no oil. We don't have any gas, almost no gas. We don't have coal, almost no coal. And I need to use the word almost because I am in the presence of the CEO of ENAP. And they are the ones responsible for exploring and trying to find it. Huh? So having said that, we do have water, we have solar radiation, we have wind, and we have a country with 4,000 kilometers of the Andean mountains with lots of volcanoes and the potential for geothermal. Probably historically, in the past, half of our energy matrix was hydro. Now, after 70 years of the longest drought in the country, we are in a situation where probably a third of our energy matrix is hydro. The decision we've made related to a project in the southern part of Chile was a decision about the project. It was not a decision related to our policy regarding hydroelectric development. We as a government, and President Bachelet has been very strong on this point, we are completely and fully committed to continue to develop our hydroelectric sector. We have projects under construction in place today with, I think, a significant progress and potential for continuing to grow within our energy matrix with hydroelectricity. So what we need to understand probably is that 10 or 20 years ago, to develop these big mega projects was quite different than today, especially because of the need of being very good in what we call social and environmental management. We need to understand that with all of the revolution of technology, with all of the access of our people to information, and with the fact that Chile has a very strong middle class today that's highly empowered. Companies that want to develop this kind of projects successfully need to do a lot of good and hard work on social and environmental management. I think our companies have read that right, and therefore are paying today more attention to this, and hopefully we will continue to develop more and more of our hydroelectric projects.
Thank you. Do you want to?
Sure, absolutely. I have a couple questions, and I'm going to try to kind of combine them into one. But the question basically relates to ENAP's role going forward and changing it from a company that was primarily interested in imports to one that may be more interested in developing local resources. And so could you give the audience a sense of how much shale gas you think there is in Chile? And I know that you're not a geologist.
We have the answer.
Just round numbers would be fine. But then also how you see ENAP going forward. And I would ask, personally, I'm curious, I know the mining sector has a very long history of robust investment from outside companies, and as we saw in the graphics, and are there lessons you can take from the mining industry and apply them as you try to develop your own resources going forward?
Well, probably if you want to know the full history of ENAP, you need to start with the ENAP in the old days with Chile having oil and gas. Mm-hmm. What happened is that after some time, we explored all that gas, and now our gas reserves are much lower, and I would probably ask Marcelo to address this more specifically. But what we know is that ENAP is a company that was founded in the old days where there was gas, there was oil in Magallanes. We are spending a lot of money in exploration. We can see that Argentina, which is just on the other side of the Andean mountains, has Vaca Muerta. Vaca Muerta is probably the second largest, or Argentina is the second largest shale gas reserves in the world after the US. So we tend to believe that there should be some shale gas on the other side of the Andean mountains. Yeah. And that's why we have an excellent CEO who is working on this, and probably I would like if Marcelo, you can comment on this and the programs that we have in place to try to find those reserves.
Yes, as the minister said, ENAP started as an upstream company in Magallanes, and again, basically because of what was happening in Argentina. Obviously, geological basins are not one own entity, independent of the frontiers, which are more political and historical. And what happened with our oil and gas production was that it started falling, and the conventional resources have obviously been depleted. But we have started exploring non-conventional resources. We have been applying much deeper exploration. We just went all the way down to 4,500 meters depth. We're fracking. Hopefully this year we will also start going from vertical to horizontal. I don't want to give any figures, but at least we're very, very optimistic that we should be able to confirm significant change in that region. But still, in terms of our figures, we are importing 98% of the oil. This is still our E&P activity is still relatively minor. Our main activity is refining, and we will unfortunately still be very dependent on imports. And exploration we're doing and concentrating in the Magallanes area, but also we have some activity abroad in Argentina, in Ecuador, and in Egypt. And we're looking forward to learn from both the new technologies and new techniques that are being applied for non-conventional exploration in the US, and also everything that has to do with environmental regulations. We want to be sure that once we start going for tight gas and tight oil, which we're doing now, and shale gas and oil, that we do it in a way in which we're not harming the environment.
Well, as one would expect in a crowd like this, we have wonderful questions, so I'm sort of shuffling through these. This one, I think, might be for Senor Pizarro, Jorge. How is the recent proposal, has to do with tax reform, how is the recent proposal to tax investors on the unrealized profits of corporation, how might that, or has it already impacted foreign investment, or do you expect it to impact foreign investment?
Well, I think the first thing that should be highlighted is that this tax reform was announced probably like during the first month of the past year when the campaign started, and since then it's been this appropriate, of course, and very right question of how's that going to impact on how is that going to slow the number of foreign direct investment flows towards the country. The truth is that, as I tried to explain with that chart in particular, the market response towards it has been fairly good. In terms that during the first 4 months, that it actually shows the proper results of this administration are even much higher than the year before. I want to be completely responsible, though, in terms of saying that we do expect that during this year, 2014, I think we will probably end up just a bit ahead of what we saw in 2013. Of course, not at the rate that we've seen during the first 4 months. I think another thing that is crucial to highlight here is that someone could think that probably there will be a wave to advance projects that want to make use of the current legal structure or the tax structure before it's changed, but that hasn't happened yet. One of the measures of the tax reform is the finish of the end of the DL 600, which was an instrument that basically channeled capitals towards the country by giving, in an exceptional way, guarantees that at one time during the early 70s the country could not give by its own. So that's why the reason the state would have to sign a contract with foreign investor. During the early 90s, almost 90% of the entire inflow of foreign direct investment will go through that vehicle. Nowadays, it's even lower than 30%. And we have come to those numbers after a steady degrading in terms of the amount of flow that particular instrument is channeling. So I think, and for what we have seen, not just in this particular trip, but also in many places in Europe, and along with newcomers or new interested investors and the ones that we've had in the country for quite a while, that of course there's interest in terms of what's coming out of the tax reform. Of course, it's in all our interest that the sooner we have the final result, the better, because we all want to know what are the final rules, edges, corners, so on and so forth. But on the other hand, major variables, the most important variables to make a long-term investment in a country are based on long-term principles. And in that term, I think what we've seen the last, actually yesterday, in the IMF and the World Bank, and the way they have received the transformation we're putting forward, I think it's very in qualitative terms, it's very important for the entire business community, and I think that is perfectly correlated with what we've been seeing in the numbers. So I think in that sense we're trying to match both variables.
Great.
I have a question about wind. You mentioned some of the non-conventional renewables, and I know I have a friend who works for Goldwind and is moving to Chile sometime this summer to do a large project there. Can you comment on the role of wind in the future, particularly with your target for clean energy?
Yeah. Well, the target that we have, and you've seen this in the agenda, is to have by 2025, 20% of our matrix with non-conventional renewable sources. I think at this stage it's important to mention that 10 years ago, or probably less, this was zero. And today it's probably around 7 to 8%. And this includes solar, wind, mini hydros, and biomass. We have some regions of the country, for example, the 4th regions, which is 250 miles north from Santiago, where 70% of the installed capacity of electricity generation is wind. It's already there. So it's connected to the grids of this central system. And I think there are huge opportunities because, as you know, we are a very long country, 4,000 kilometers of coastline, and there are many, many, many places where we have already approved the permits to continue to develop the wind farming.
Thank you.
There are several questions in my stack related to LNG. So the most general one is, you described needed growth, obviously, of megawatts and power capacity. What role do you expect LNG to play in satisfying Chile's overall energy needs?
Probably most of you know that we had an energy matrix that was highly dependent from gas coming from Argentina.
Yes. And
we built that infrastructure in the late 90s and early 2000. But suddenly, after really expanding this LNG or natural gas source from Argentina up to levels that represented almost 35% of the total energy matrix. Because of Argentina's shortage in gas, they discontinued to export gas to Chile. And when I say they discontinue, meaning in a period of 2 to 3 years, we had no further gas coming from Argentina. We had a very significant infrastructure being developed in terms of pipelines and also all of the generating power stations. But now, as of today, our energy matrix has around 16%, 1/6, supplied with natural gas. What we've mentioned in the agenda of energy is that we would like to see natural gas, LNG, as well, representing something above that. We have not provided a specific number, but if in the year 2000 we had like 26%, and today we have 16%, whatever number you pick from that range is going to be a fair number. We want to see more gas coming into our country, not only to generate electricity, but also to supply householders with gas for the heating. Of the total energy matrix, primary energy matrix of Chile, 20% is firewood, and it's mainly the southern part of the country. And there is a huge impact in health and pollution because of that. We would like to see gas in the electric sector to replace fuel because it's cleaner and cheaper. And we would like to see gas in the heating sector because it's also cleaner. Therefore, I think there's a very clear objective to try to introduce more gas into our energy matrix and to our heating system.
As a follow-up to that, I have a question here about the Southern Gas Pipeline. Apparently, according to the question, Peru just announced a contract. And do you think that that will provide a source for natural gas for Chile going forward as well?
Well, this is, I don't want to speak on behalf of the Peruvian government.
Fair enough.
But just to make sure that we make it right. We've been doing a lot of good progress, as I mentioned in my remarks, in relation to the electric grid. But we do know that they have a big project to build a pipeline from where they have the natural reserves or the natural explorations to Ilo, which is the port, which is very close to the border with Chile. And all what we know is that this is a kind of a $5 billion project, and that the economics of the project show that really the best use of the gas is for Chile, for obvious reasons. But still, no decision has been made from the Peruvian side up to now. And we would obviously like to start some discussions with the Peruvian government once they make a decision on that pipeline. Thank you.
The next question is about the regulatory structure. And the question is, what is the regulatory structure? Who is the final arbiter in balancing environmental concerns with development concerns and meeting natural resource and energy needs? And realize that's a very long, complicated question, potentially.
Well, it may be, and it's not as long as other states in the U.S. I've heard I've heard that there are some places or some states here in the U.S. where permitting takes 10 years.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that is not the case of Chile. It's only a bit longer than what it was 5 years ago. I think we don't know why. That's part of the modern world, that's part of the modern society, that's part of a global trend. The way this works is that there is a Secretary of Environment, and they are responsible for all of the applications that companies need to make for the permitting of the projects. Then there are obviously, as you can imagine, lots of specific permits that are in several different agencies. Our role as the Ministry of Energy is to try to simplify all this, because we know sometimes that the state is a very complex organization, because it has to deal with a complex world. It's not that we like complexity, it's just that we need to recognize the complexity of society. Of course. And therefore, the several different agencies that we have for specific permits somehow are being, I would say, managed or somehow monitored by our minister. But the key permits, which are the environmental permits, are the ones that need to be applied to the Secretary of Environment through, I think, a quite well-established process. We want to be sure that once this process is finished, communities accept the projects. Because what's been happening is that sometimes the final reaction of communities to these approved projects is to take their claims to the courts. And by doing so, obviously, they introduce an additional complexity to the process. I think the best way to address this is by making sure that the environmental regulations have enough legitimacy in the society so as not to allow that this happens. And we're working hard on that.
I don't have any more questions, and so at this point, as Pedro can tell you, I would usually threaten the class with some kind of a grade outcome that if I don't start getting more participation, your grades will suffer. So I was going to say we can open up the floor to questions if any of you have bad handwriting and we're just shy about writing it down. But Melinda, do you have any other good ones? I could make up a few, but
I do. There's
what we also would like to do is we can take one more. We'll take one more question from Melinda. The minister has to be right here in the hotel somewhere in the next 15 minutes. So what I would like to do is maybe have one more question, then stop, and then we can mingle. The breakfast is still outside. There's another large Chilean delegation here that I'll be more than sure that you guys would like to say hello. So maybe we can have 15 minutes of greeting people and saying hello,
Yep.
having breakfast, and then we'll steal the minister and take him away at a quarter till. But if we can take one more question, and then we'll mingle for another 15 minutes or so.
Go ahead.
Okay. Last question. What are the plans of the new government regarding downstream oil, refining and distribution?
Well, at this stage, I think what you need to know is that this energy sector in Chile is mainly private. The only company that we have in the sector is ENAP. We've been, I think, strengthening our private sector, helping the private sector to continue to grow, both with local investors and foreign investors. We would like to see our sector strengthened and developing with no subsidies and with more investment from privates.
Seems like a good note to end on. So thank you very much. Thank you all for staying as well.